What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Figures of Sport podcast. As we always are, guys, we are super excited for today's episode. We've got some NBA, some NFL, and of course, some MLB news to talk about. If you guys didn't watch our last episode, episode 66 of the podcast, it was definitely one of my favorite episodes that I have recorded since we brought the podcast back a couple of months ago. It was an episode where we talked about all of the MLB trade deadline deals. We talked about the losers of the deadline, the winners of the deadline, the teams that had the most underwhelming deadline, and teams that had a solid deadline. Overall, not the best, not the worst, but solid. So it was such a fun episode, man. There were so many trades on deadline day. And, you guys specifically requested that you wanted a trade deadline special episode. So guess what? You guys asked and you guys got it. So after you guys watch this episode, though, if you haven't already, please make sure that you go watch that episode. It means a lot to me if you guys are to take some time. I know the episode is a little bit longer than what we've usually put out over the last few weeks. It's a little over an hour, but again, we had some great discussions in that episode. So really hoping that you guys can make some time to check that episode out. As I said before, it would mean a lot to me. But without further ado, everybody, we are going to jump into episode 67 of the podcast. And today, as I said as well, we've got NBA, we've got NFL, and of course, we've got some more MLB talk for you guys. But the first thing that we're going to talk about today is the NBA. First things first, Luka Doncic got paid last week. He signed a 3-year, $165 million extension with the Los Angeles Lakers. He is committed to the franchise, and the franchise is committed to him. And, I think it obviously we knew that was going to happen because of the fact that the Lakers knew that they couldn't trade away Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic just for him to walk. So they had to make sure that they were able to lock up their guy. And honestly, this deal really kind of shows a shift in the franchise's future direction. Obviously, LeBron James is nearing the end of his career, probably closer than he has ever been. He's over 40 years old. I believe he's entering season 23 now. So, for LeBron James, there was some rumors earlier this offseason that there could potentially be some tension between LeBron and the Lakers organization. Maybe because they don't see him as the focal point anymore now that they've acquired Luka Doncic. And if that is the case, it really does make a lot of sense. You can't continue to rely on a 40-year-old to build around and to carry the organization, especially when you have a guy in his mid-20s who, when healthy, is one of the premier players in the NBA. So it makes a lot of sense. I would understand why LeBron James is upset because it's LeBron James, but at the same time, it's Luka Doncic waiting in the wings to take the reins of the franchise. So overall, I think it was a great deal by the Lakers organization to lock up their guy in Luka Doncic. And I think going forward in the next few off seasons, we're going to see this team, the construction of this team change a lot. Just because as currently constructed, they were built around Anthony Davis and LeBron James, right? But I think that going forward, we're going to see a shift, and this team is going to start to be built around Luka Doncic. Obviously, Luka, when the Mavericks made that playoff run and made it to the finals a couple of seasons back, Luka Doncic worked really well with guys who can defend, shoot the three ball, and of course having another playmaker alongside of him in Kyrie Irving. The Lakers do have another playmaker in Austin Reeves, but the fact that he is going to be due for a contract really soon, and he's going to want a big payday, it'll be interesting to see how the Lakers navigate that contract situation, and if they bring him back or if they choose to go a different route and bringing a different player in to kind of run the show with Luka Doncic. So, but overall, like I said before, I think it was a great deal for both sides. And at the end of that 3-year extension, there is a player opt out. I think he will be in line for a major payday at that point. So it'll be interesting to see if he will stay with the Lakers and what they do in the next few years. Like I said, roster construction, playoff runs, things like that. So obviously, all of those things are going to play a huge part in his decision in a few years. But for the time being, this is going to be Luka Doncic's franchise going forward. And you know, I think overall, we saw that last year at a certain point, the Lakers were one of the top defensive teams after trading Anthony Davis, just because of JJ Redick doing some things differently with the players he had available to him. And I think that now having a full offseason to install both an offensive package and defensive package with Luka Doncic on this team, I think the Lakers are going to be significantly better than they were in the second half of last year. They did add DeAndre Ayton. They added Jake LaRavia in free agency. But, of course, it wasn't the flashiest of moves, either of those, right? And it makes sense because, again, as I mentioned earlier, I think the construction of this roster can change drastically in the next couple of seasons as LeBron is entering the twilight, years of his career. There's uncertainty if this will be his last season or if he'll play one more after this or two more or whatever the case is. But, I think that going forward, the best decision is to build around Luka Doncic. And I think that we're going to start to see the Lakers do that, which is why they didn't spend so much money this offseason when there's potential better free agents in the next couple of summers. So makes a lot of sense. But I am interested to see how this Lakers organization does switch things up offensively and defensively now that they will have a full offseason to really install Luka Doncic into their system on both sides of the ball. So super exciting to see that both he and the organization are committed to each other for the foreseeable future. And this is his city now. So obviously, him making such a drastic change physically with the diet that he's been on too, I'm sure played a huge part. I think we're going to see a really great season from Luka this year. Honestly, if he can stay healthy and if he is in, at a performing athletic shape as we've seen him, before. I think we could see a potential MVP season from Luka Doncic. So super excited to see this new Lakers team going into the season. They will have their hands full though because this Western Conference got better. The Clippers got better. Obviously, OKC is here to stay, and the Denver Nuggets got better as well. So the Western Conference is going to be really fun, and I'm excited. So I hope you guys are too, because all season long we're going to be following that along and making sure that you guys are up to date on everything that is going on. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But sticking with the NBA, another player got a contract extension and got paid. Mikal Bridges of the New York Knicks. He signed a 4-year, $150 million deal with a player option for the 2029-2030 season. Now, this is the year for the New York Knicks. The Eastern Conference is significantly weaker than it has been in recent years. Yes, there are some teams, for example, like the Atlanta Hawks, who did have a great offseason, in my personal opinion, adding the players that they did, and I think they can make a lot of noise. But the New York Knicks made it pretty far in the playoffs last year, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Yes, they played an Indiana Pacers team who outplayed them for sure, but the Indiana Pacers are not going to be in that position this upcoming year without Tyrese Halliburton. They also don't really have to worry about the Boston Celtics because they don't have Jason Tatum. The Milwaukee Bucks added Miles Turner. Yes, great signing by them, but they lost Damian Lillard. So it's going to be a very wide open Eastern Conference this year. And some other teams, maybe some of the young guns like the Detroit Pistons, I think they're going to remain in that playoff hunt. But I think the fact that they're losing on some of those guys that were key pieces to their playoff run, obviously Malik Beasley is still under investigation. Nothing has really kind of come from that. But losing a guy like Tim Hardaway, and that's gonna hurt them. So I think we're going to see some of those other teams in the Eastern Conference. Of course, the Orlando Magic, a great young team as well. I think it's going to be the New York Knicks with a great chance to do a lot of good things in the Eastern Conference this year, with a bunch of young teams that are hungry and wanting to make a name for themselves. So out of the most recent few years, this is the Knicks' best chance to really make some noise. So Mikal Bridges has gotten paid. OG Anunoby has gotten paid. Uh, Jalen Brunson obviously took a lower salary to bring some of these guys in and make a title run. And they have Cat still, and they added Jordan Clarkson and still have some guys on their bench like Mitchell Robinson. But this is the year, that we're headed into. This is the year for the New York Knicks to really make a run. So they have a new coach, new coaching staff. This is the time for them to really go out and really do some things in the Eastern Conference and make a deep playoff run, if not a finals run. So going to be very interesting to see how this New York Knicks team tries to take advantage of their opportunity. Now, the last thing I do want to talk about for the NBA is the Chicago Bulls extended head coach Billy Donovan. And I just ask why. As a fan of the organization, I have questions only because of the fact that Billy Donovan, he has had very modest seasons as the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. We still talk about the team from years ago where Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso and all those guys were excellent through January and were the number one team in the Eastern Conference. And since then it's been all downhill. They've hung around and been a play-in team year in, year out. And, obviously they've dealt with injuries and now they're in this position where they kind of want to compete for a play-in spot, but they're also trying to develop the young talent, which I understand. And they also still haven't signed Josh Giddey, who I think that he was one of the biggest bright spots in that second half of the season for them last year, and they're still holding out on him. I think it would be not the smartest of decisions to lose Josh Giddey. Maybe the asking price is too high, and they're trying to work at it to get it a little bit lower where they're more comfortable, which I understand. But I really hope that they're able to get something done, because if their goal is to compete, Josh Giddey is a solid player, and we saw that from him last year. They should do that, right? But again, there's been some questionable decisions, and I think the Billy Donovan, extension is another one of those, because again, we saw coaches like Tom Thibodeau get fired for taking his team to the Eastern Conference Finals. I understand it's not a finals run or a championship, right? But his let's say the main reason of his rumors, at least, of course, and people saw it, was that he didn't use his bench enough, right? He would use the same 6 or 7, maybe 8 guys, and his starters would be exhausted, right? And I understand it, right? And then Mike Malone, who won a championship a couple of seasons ago, got fired from the Denver Nuggets. Rumors were that the general manager, wanted certain players to play, but Mike Malone wanted the players that give him the best chance at winning a opportunity to play. So, but Billy Donovan gets off the hook after making plans year in and year out and not having true success, not committing to one way or the other. You traded DeMar DeRozan, or you let him go, and then you trade away Zach LaVine, and now you recently traded Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro. And I just don't know what the organization is doing, and I don't know. They're not committing one way or the other as far as competing or not competing. You want to let young guys develop, but you're not necessarily giving them as much playtime as they possibly should get to develop. And I just have a lot of questions as to why he was extended. I think there was a potential other options that maybe a good fit for the organization, because sometimes a breath of fresh air is absolutely needed. Sometimes after a certain amount of time, guys will tune their coaches out and not play as hard. And I just think that maybe in Chicago it's time for that. But I I just have some questions. I do hope that the Bulls are successful this season. And hopefully we can try to bring in some of the remaining talented, free agents. I would like to see them bring back Josh Giddey at maybe a better price. I think he was asking north of $30 million. Maybe we can get him on a better deal than that, and I would love to see that because I do think he was a solid player for the Bulls last year. But again, I think sometimes we see some questionable decisions being made, and I have some questions about Billy Donovan staying in Chicago long term. So it'll be interesting to see how this team shakes out and if they are to add any more pieces before the season starts. But um, yeah, just a lot of questions there. So, but we're gonna move on and we're gonna talk about the NFL, guys. And we've got some news. So Micah Parsons requested a trade from the Dallas Cowboys. Um, he penned a note on X, and he talked about how he doesn't want to be there anymore, and he wants to be traded. And one thing that he said that really stood out to me was that the Cowboys were trying to have contract negotiations without his agent present. I don't know if that's necessarily the best practice because obviously it it just raises some questions. Why can't you have those conversations with the agent there, right? Do I think Micah Parsons is going to be traded? Probably not. Jerry Jones even said himself that they're not going to trade him, that this is part of the negotiations, right? That player's going to ask for a trade and then we pay him or whatever the case is. But, I think there's a difference here because of the fact that obviously we kind of saw it with Myles Garrett. He requested a trade. He wanted to be in a winning situation, and then he got paid $40 million, and then all of a sudden he's super happy in Cleveland, right? So I could see a similar scenario happening in Dallas, but also I think the way that the Cowboys and Jerry Jones have handled the contract negotiations, I don't necessarily know if that will just be all Micah Parsons wants. I think he feels disrespected. Jerry Jones kind of threw some jabs at him a couple of times, saying, hey, even if we pay him, we may not have him, and those are things that I just think that you necessarily shouldn't say about one of your players, especially a player of Micah Parsons' caliber. So um, it's it's going to be really interesting to see if they are able to resolve this and how they are able to resolve it if it does come to that. But I do want to ask you guys, if Micah Parsons is traded, where do you guys think he should go? Where do you think is the best fit for a Micah Parsons? I would love to hear your guys' comments. Please let me know in the comments. Really excited to hear your guys' thoughts there. Although I have my answer, and it is the Chicago Bears. Hint, hint, obviously, because I'm a fan, right? But I also think that a player like Micah Parsons would be extremely valuable for this team. I'm adding a guy that can play on the D line to add more pressure alongside a Montez Sweat. I think that would be great. That's just me being biased, though. But I really want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Where should Micah Parsons go? Where would he be best fit if he is to get his trade request granted? Let me know in the comments, guys. Really excited to hear your guys' answers. Now, another trade request comes from another team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin requested a trade. Terry McLaurin is a fantastic receiver. Obviously, he has dealt with the quarterback carousel almost his entire career in Washington, and he had an excellent season with Jaden Daniels last year. And I understand that he wants to get paid. My question to you guys is he worth an A.J. Brown or a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase type of contract? Because he is wanting more north of $30 million per season for his services, right? And, you know, Terry McLaurin has been extremely consistent throughout his career. He puts up numbers, like I said, even though he's had a revolving door of quarterbacks since he's really been a part of that organization. And it seems like Jaden Daniels is the first sense of stability he might have at the quarterback position. But do you guys think he's worth north of $30 million? Now, I don't think that the Commanders are going to give in to this request at all. because of the fact that, it's going to be hard for them to replicate what he can do for that offense. I think that offense, obviously led by Jaden Daniels at the quarterback position, it's very dependent on a guy like Terry McLaurin to go out there and produce. Yes, Jaden Daniels had an excellent season last year, and he had guys that produced all over the field outside of Terry McLaurin, from the tight end position, other wide receivers, the running backs, things like that. But I do think that having a solidified guy like Terry McLaurin is going to make everything significantly easier. So I think obviously having a guy who's in his second year at the quarterback position and Jaden Daniels, you need to have that sense of comfortability with his wide receivers. And on top of that, uh, consistency. Having a guy like Terry McLaurin who puts up big numbers year after year, you know, if you lose that, that could be very detrimental to the development of a Jaden Daniels. And obviously, the Washington Commanders, after last season, it seems like their trajectory is only going up. But if they were to lose Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, that can change very quickly. So I don't think that they are going to fulfill his trade request. I think the Micah Parsons situation is very different from this one. But I do think that at some point they may have to give in, because they cannot afford to lose him. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this situation. But again, my next question for you guys is, if Terry McLaurin was to be traded, where do you guys think he would be best fit? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Super excited to hear that from you guys as well. Now, we're going to talk about the Chicago Bears. There's been a lot of conversation about Caleb Williams, and he's had some turnovers, he's missed some throws, and there's high expectations for this Bears team. And obviously, the number one thing I'm going to say is the fact that they are dealing with an entirely new offensive system. In fact, this is probably Caleb Williams' third offensive system in 1 year. Obviously they had Shane Waldron to begin last year, and then he was let go, and then they had another system come in, and then now obviously Ben Johnson is coming in with his new staff to do things his way, right? So the Detroit Lions obviously were super successful, but Ben Johnson was there for some time and was able to really kind of build that offense with those guys together, and now with the expectations of the Chicago Bears now, because of the team that they have, players all over the field that are dynamic, from in their wide receiver room, their tight end room, the running back position. Offensively, they have a very skilled group of players, right? Especially with Caleb Williams as your quarterback. But learning a new offense, especially a complex new offense such as Ben Johnson's, it's going to take some time. So I think people are overreacting to seeing him struggle, because in my personal opinion, right, get all of the struggles out now in training camp. That is what this time is for, to really learn everything and focus on getting better at the things you're making mistakes on, right? So if the Bears are supposed to be a good team this year, the only way for them to do that, right, is to be successful offensively and defensively, right? But it takes time for this complex offense to be learned, right? Ben Johnson's offense has a lot of trick plays, has a lot of shifts, has a lot of motions, a lot of movement overall in this complex offense that he runs. So I think people are very much overreacting to early training camp woes by Caleb Williams, and I think we should just take a step back and remember that there hasn't been a sense of consistency amongst the Bears organization for a long time. I mean, think about it. The quarterback before Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, had how many offensive coordinators during his short stint with the Bears, for a few seasons? Um, it has been a revolving door of head coaches and offensive coordinators for the Chicago Bears. So I think we are now finally seeing a guy, because everyone has had such high praise for Ben Johnson and the intensity that he coaches at. He wants perfection, right? So if something isn't perfect, of course it's going to look bad on the young quarterback, right? Let him get everything out now. Make your mistakes now. When the season comes, we want to see you perform. If by week 7 or 8, the Bears are struggling and it's because of Caleb Williams, then I understand all of these reactions. But I think it's training camp. Let's take a deep breath, especially to the Bears fans. Let's take a deep breath. Let's relax and let's let this play out. This is a complex offense. Let's let Caleb and the Bears offense do what they have to do in training camp to come and be ready for the season. But as I said before, too, there is very high expectations. The pressure is on for not only the Bears to perform, being with that they have such a good roster at this point, but it's very much so on Caleb Williams as well. So I'm very excited to see how this Bears team can perform heading into this season. I don't want to have high expectations myself because sometimes when you are a Chicago sports fan, you tend to get your hopes and dreams crushed. So I'm just hoping for a season that we see some growth and we see some competitiveness from this organization and hopefully winning more than 5 games. That's all I want to see. That's growth in my book. So I'm super excited for this upcoming season. And like I said, guys, as the season gets closer, we are obviously going to have so much great football content for you guys. And also, just a heads up, I know I've hinted at it, potentially doing it, but we do plan on having a fantasy football segment in the next few weeks. We're just working out the kinks in that one. But we are going to make sure that we can try to get you guys at least one episode before the season starts on fantasy football, potentially how to, go about draft strategies, players that we think are going to be sleepers, guys that you should absolutely target in early rounds, in late rounds, mid rounds, all of those things. Super excited to get that out to you guys as well. So like I said, we're working out the kinks on that, but it is in the plans to come out in the next few weeks. So I'm super excited about that. The season starts on September 4th, I believe. So we're going to make sure that we have something out for sure before then, as long as we're able to get everything straightened out. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that as well. But one more thing on the NFL, Bills running back James Cook is officially holding in. He did not practice. He's at training camp, so he doesn't get fined, but he is not practicing. He is not participating in anything because he wants a new contract, and I completely understand it. He performed at such a high level last season, and you know I just don't know if the Buffalo Bills are going to be willing to pay him the money that he's asking for, which is, I believe, around 18 or 17 million a year. Obviously we know that running backs in this league are very expendable. You can get rid of a running back one year and find a rookie who can do similar things, and obviously they're on a rookie contract. So why would I pay a guy 18 million when I can pay a guy 4 to 5 million who does similar things? And it makes sense financially, but I think he was a great performer for the Bills, and I truly do wonder if they are going to try to work out a contract for him. He does still have this year remaining on his original deal, but he wants to get paid, and if anything happens, he wants that security. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks before the season starts, to see if they are able to iron that contract dispute out. And of course, like I said, like I always say, we will always make sure that we are reporting everything that we hear to you guys, so you guys are up to date and aware of everything that's going on, whether it's NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever it is, whatever you guys want, we got it for you guys here. So super excited to see if this Bills team can re-sign a high-level performer in James Cook. Now we're going to talk about MLB, and we're not going to talk about the trade deadline because obviously that was the last episode, right? You guys got an hour plus of content, so make sure, like I said before, if you guys haven't checked it out, go check it out after you finish this episode. But for the MLB, just a few things I wanted to talk about. The Marlins sweeping the New York Yankees, which is, I believe, their first ever sweep against them. They're like the only team that has an above 500 record against the New York Yankees. So super crazy to see. But The Marlins fans actually showed up this time. I believe they sold out all 3 games in Miami, and the Marlins performed great. Kyle Stowers had a good series. Edward Cabrera had a solid outing against them as well. And that team has been rolling, honestly, since the All-Star break, and really since I believe it's June. They've performed at such a high level. They're 500 right now. Remember, we're recording this on Monday, so anything that's happening today, obviously, if they're 500 today, they may not be 500 when this episode comes out, but they're playing 500 baseball at the very minimum, winning a lot, playing good ball, and for them to sweep the Yankees, it was very interesting to see. But something's brewing down in Miami, so keep an eye on that. They might not be a team, obviously, to compete for a wild card spot this year, but it seems like their young talent is panning out. So hopefully Miami is able to hold on to some of that talent, though, and they don't trade some of those guys away as they have kind of been known to do. So we'll have to see what they end up doing in the offseason and heading into next year. But from the last few weeks, this Miami Marlins team has been really, really fun to watch. But if we're going to talk about teams that are fun to watch, we're going to talk about the Chicago White Sox. Yes, another hometown topic. Yes, I get it. But my Chicago White Sox are playing great ball since the All-Star break. They are 10-5. I believe they've hit over 28 home runs, scoring a lot of runs. They've been playing a fun brand of baseball. Colson Montgomery has been absolutely electric. So many doubts about the kid when he was struggling in AAA, and I get it. If you're struggling in AAA, what would make you think you can come up to the bigs and just show out? I don't know, but Colson did it, right? Shout out to Colson Montgomery. The kid is performing at such a great level right now. The Chicago White Sox are performing at such a great level. It's been fun to watch them over the last few weeks, man. Like I said, since the break, they're 10-5, playing great ball. They're a fun team, guys. I'm really hoping that over the next, hopefully this year, maybe we'll see some of the other younger guys in September once the rosters expand a little bit, come up and play a little bit and see what they got. And next season, I'm excited. A lot of young talent on this team. I believe they have 5 top 100 prospects: Braden Montgomery, Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, to name a few. So really excited for this Chicago White Sox team, guys. It's been a rough couple of seasons, but seeing them play such a good brand of baseball as of late has been really, really fun to see. So shout out to the White Sox. Keep doing y'all thing. We're staying tuned, and catch me at a game real soon. Now, one more thing, a couple other things, but we're gonna talk about the Speedway Classic. The MLB put together the Speedway Classic in Bristol, and it was a matchup between the Atlanta Braves and the Cincinnati Reds. But there was a lot of complaints. There was bad weather, and I think the idea or the concept of it, to play baseball at a speedway track, a NASCAR speedway track, I think it was great, right? Having all those fans there, I just think it was great idea, poor execution, right? There were so many complaints, like I said, running out of food early, the weather, that's not something they can control, obviously, but, the weather being a factor and having them, delay the game, and then they wanted to get the game in, and then they started the game and then shut it down. And, it was just a very hectic situation there. But, honestly, what it feels like is that the MLB is trying to recapture the electricity that the Field of Dreams game had, right? And I think it's really hard to do that. The Field of Dreams game a few years ago was incredible. It honestly, it felt like a movie watching that series or that game. So I feel like with the MLB trying to do it now, it just feels sometimes forced, right? And obviously, and I think a huge factor of it, it could be the fact that some of these teams aren't as successful as the two teams who played in the Field of Dreams were, right? That year, the Chicago White Sox were really good. The Yankees were really good, both competing for playoff spots, obviously, at the tops of their division. And this year, obviously the Reds and the Braves, neither of them are at the top of their division. So maybe that's a part of it, maybe why it's not as well received. But I think the idea of it was really, really good. I just think it was poor execution. If they decide to bring the Speedway Classic back, maybe with a little bit more thoughtful planning into it, I think it could be a really fun series to go to, and to follow. So I hope the MLB can kind of hear the fans out, and see what went wrong with it, and then try to improve on it when they potentially bring it back. So, but yeah, guys. So I know I mentioned the Marlins having a great weekend against the Yankees, and just being solid over the last few weeks in general, as well as the White Sox. But the I got to talk about a couple other teams. The Brewers, they're 11-4 since the All-Star game. The Marlins are 11-4. The White Sox are 10-5. The Guardians are 10-6. The Rangers are 10-6. The Padres are 10-6. Those are just a few teams to name that have been the best teams since the All-Star break. But some of the teams that you're going to see, that I'm going to say now, have been towards the bottom of the league actually since the All-Star game. The Dodgers, they're 7-8. The Yankees are 7-9. The Tigers are 6-10. The Astros are 6-10. These are teams that they're competing for division spots. Like the Dodgers are top in the NL West, but the Padres, especially with the recent additions they made at the trade deadline, are closing in on that short lead that the Dodgers have. So, I think the Padres are really going to give the Dodgers a big chase for that NL West division, and it's going to be exciting to see. And then when you look at the Yankees have dropped from, earlier in the season, first place in the AL East. They're now in third place. So they've been struggling mightily. The Tigers obviously have been struggling. But they have such a big lead in the AL Central. Maybe it's not as worrisome for them, but seeing them struggle is a little bit of a shock. Especially with how good they were early on in the season. Now I think with some of the new additions that they made and getting guys back from injury, that maybe could change. But yeah, I just very shocked that the Tigers have been so bad since the All-Star game, honestly. And again, the last team I mentioned was the Astros at 6-10. The Mariners made some great acquisitions in Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor. And I think that AL West division, especially with some of the pieces that the Rangers added as well, now having the Rangers and the Mariners on their tail, that AL West division is going to be very competitive. And if the Astros want to try to stay out of the wild card race, they really need to pick things up. So, but hey, we're in the beginning of August, the dog days of August, and it's about that time where teams, are some of them are starting to struggle, some of them are catching their stride. So it's all about how you can bounce back from those struggles, right? So there's a lot of baseball left, though, guys. We've got all of August, we've got all of September, and then we got the postseason. But make sure you guys stay tuned, because we are going to follow all of this stuff all season long, and we're going to make sure that you guys are up to date on everything, division races, best players, best streaks, all of that stuff. Super excited to make sure that you guys are getting this content in a timely manner. So huge shout out to you guys. And if you guys haven't, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, your family, and everybody else you know. It really means a lot to us here. But I think on that note, guys, we're going to call it an episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we will make sure to catch you on the next one.